WCNC Charlotte. This is Flashpoint, where power and politics collide and the tough questions get asked and answered.
Thanks for joining us here on Flashpoint. I'm Ben Thompson. Today, a one-on-one interview with the Chief Executive of North Carolina, Roy Cooper, entering his final year in office. But it comes after several big and very public battles with a Republican supermajority in the General Assembly. The governor weighs in on this past year and his plans for the future. Joining us now, the 75th governor of the state of North Carolina, Roy Cooper. Governor, thanks for coming on and joining us. We appreciate it.
Glad to be with you today, Ben.
All right, so let's begin with Medicaid expansion. It launched a few weeks ago. You've said it was one of the most important things to happen this year. 600,000 people now with health care coverage. But we also know that Republicans tied it to the budget, and you've called that a bad budget that, quote, shortchanges schools, prioritizes power grabs, keeps shady backroom deals secret. So it begs the question, Governor, was Medicaid expansion worth it?
Absolutely was. You know, when you're in government and trying to do good for the people, sometimes you have to forge compromises to find the best way forward. And I think one of the best days I've had as governor is being in an enrollment center in Charlotte and seeing everyday working people finally being able to get health care coverage for themselves. One person I talked to had health insurance for the first time in their adult life. And we're talking about health insurance for our child care workers, people who stock our grocery stores, people who look after seniors, people who had been making a little too much money to qualify for Medicaid coverage, but not enough money to qualify for enough subsidies under the Affordable Care Act to make them be able to have affordable health insurance. So this will mean so much to those families. It will help to make sure that we keep our rural hospitals open. It will help our law enforcement. There's a reason that we had tough on crime sheriffs coming down to the legislature and saying, hey, we need Medicaid expansion because a lot of the people we deal with have mental health issues and substance use disorder, and they need health care and not handcuffs. This was an exciting day for North Carolina. It's going to create good paying jobs, and it's the right thing to do for our state. It allows us to bring in that $521 million a month from the federal government in tax money that you and I have already paid to Washington to come back to North Carolina to keep people healthier, to create good paying jobs, to keep rural hospitals open. And I am so excited that North Carolina finally has gotten there. We've also created a roadmap for the other 10 states that have yet to do it, a bipartisan coalition of people who finally agreed that Medicaid expansion was the right thing for North Carolina, and I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I mean, it was 10 years in the making. When local lawmaker Tricia Cotham switched parties in the spring, it gave Republicans a supermajority, as you know, and it really tied your hands. You suffered a number of legislative defeats this year. Curious, do you blame her or do you blame Democrats, including yourself, for allowing that to happen?
Well, I look at this year as a very positive one because we have record-breaking numbers of jobs being brought into North Carolina. We are becoming a clean energy epicenter, and I've done that by working in a bipartisan way with the General Assembly. We're going to be able to roll off electric vehicles. We're going to be able to bring those great paying jobs to people's families. Yes, it was disappointing to see the Republicans get a supermajority when that's not what the people voted for. But what we're going to continue to do is in this 2024 election to let people know that women's reproductive freedom is at stake. Public education is at stake. Our public school students now are going to suffer because the General Assembly has passed a private school voucher bill on steroids that's going to allow the very rich to collect taxpayer money to keep their children in private academies. And we're going to let them know that it's time to make sure we break that supermajority in the General Assembly and continue the balance that has been so important to our state growing. It's been so important to making us the third fastest growing state in the country. It's been so important to make sure that we are, for the second year in a row, the #1 state in the country to do business. There are a lot of positive things that are happening in our state, despite the fact that we have a supermajority in the General Assembly. But I hope the people of North Carolina are going to correct that next year in the 2024 elections.
What does your relationship look like with Tim Moore and Phil Berger right now? Do you see anything changing, that dynamic changing in any way next year?
Well, it's important to note that we have worked together to pass clean energy legislation in North Carolina that requires our power sector to reduce carbon emissions to zero by 2050. We've come together to work to invest the billions of dollars in federal money that we're going to have to fix water systems, pave roads, provide more public transportation, to fix our ports and airports, to connect every household to high-speed internet access. They have given me the authority to go out and recruit businesses with performance-based incentives that have helped to draw great-paying jobs to North Carolina, and they only get the tax credits if they create the jobs at the salaries that they've said they've created. So we've worked together to do all of those things. Obviously, we've had disagreements. And for the last 4 years, before they broke the supermajority, we were able to stop a lot of their bad legislation that attacked women's reproductive freedom, that got cultural wars back into our schools. But of course, during the first couple of months of this year, they passed those things. They passed an abortion ban. They passed a Don't Say Gay bill. Those pieces of legislation are wrong for our state. They're wrong in and of themselves, but it has the potential to hurt us economically down the road. And we're looking forward to the elections next year to try and fix some of that. People need to be aware that Republicans are working to take away completely women's reproductive freedom, and they need to think about that when they go to the polls.
Up next on Flashpoint, our interview with North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper continues. Next, the governor's plans for the future and what he's considering after leaving office.